Hello and welcome to PTI. I am Noah Seuss. I'm joined by Harris Sideband and Trey Peterson. And today we'll be talking about who will win the national championship. There's a lot of good teams out there. Is Georgia going to get back to that championship level? Is Alabama? Harris, what do you think?
Well, I'm going to go with the old reliable. I'm going to go with the pinnacle of college football, the Alabama Crimson Tide. Yes, they lost the GOAT, the best coach of all time, Nick Saban, in the offseason on January 10th. But since then, they've done nothing but bring back more talent and better things. Kalen DeBoer went to the national championship last year. That's not much of a downgrade, even if it is a downgrade. They got quarterback Jalen Milroe, the most versatile player in the entire country, a guy that can do it on his feet and through the air. They got Jeremy Bernard, a wide receiver from Washington, and they're bringing back guys like Kobe Prentice and Kendrick Law, and they have a double-headed backfield in Jam Miller and Justice Haynes. This team has one of the best offenses in the country, and even though they lost Nick Saban, it's not going to be a problem for the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Trey, what do you got?
Well, I think you're a little crazy. I think that the Georgia Bulldogs will win the national championship again, like they did in 2021 and 2022. But I think this year they are not going to lose to Alabama, even though Alabama and Georgia both are in the top three, I would say, for number one recruiting classes in the nation. They are constantly bringing in 5-star recruits, 4.5-star recruits every chance they can get. I've met numbers of guys that are transferring from their old school to go to Georgia or Alabama or another bigger school. I think that both of them are going to be a powerhouse, but I think Georgia just has a lot more defensive talent than Alabama does. I haven't really heard any names from the Alabama defense in my lifetime, and if I have, they are probably in the NFL right now. Plus, Georgia and Alabama, as I said, are still drafting those 5-star recruits every day. So, anything could change, anything could happen, but I think Georgia Bulldogs are going to go all the way.
Now, let me ask you something, Trey. Last year, Georgia, the number one team in the country the whole year, they hadn't lost a game in 2 years. They go into the SEC championship. They lose. To who? Alabama. Now, who thought Alabama was going to win that game? Nobody. Because you know what? Every time Georgia goes and plays Alabama, they lose. Except for the one national championship game when they lost both Jameson Williams and John Mechie. Georgia's beat Alabama one time in the last 7 years. And that was in that one national championship game. So I don't know what Kirby Smart is, but his kryptonite seems to be Alabama. And for the Alabama defensive side, Deontay Lawson, All-American last year. Malachi Moore, All-American last year. And they brought in guys like Keon Sapp from Michigan, Damani Jackson from USC, and King Mack from Penn State. This defense is stacked, one of the best defenses in the country. There's definitely a lot of things on the offensive side, but the defensive side isn't bad whatsoever either. Top 10 defense in the country. Georgia, on the other hand, they lost almost everybody. Ladd McConkey, all of their running backs. They lost a lot of guys on defense. So can Carson Beck do it by himself? He's not that versatile. So what makes you think that Carson Beck, a non-versatile quarterback, can lead Georgia to a national championship game?
Well, Harris, I don't think that Alabama himself was a kryptonite to Kirby Smart. I think that Nick Saban was. And now that Nick Saban has left the Alabama Crimson Tide, I think that his coaching style was very well driven, and he worked his players very hard. But you never know what the new coach is capable of. You never know if he's going to be good. You never know if he's going to be bad. With Georgia, Kirby Smart. He's won 2 national championships in 5 years. He's made 3 playoff appearances in the past 5 years. And even though he lost to Alabama and Nick Saban, he still destroyed the living heck out of Florida State, who is considered to be deserving of a playoff spot because they were the number one ACC team in the league. So I think that Kirby Smart will do a lot of good to the Georgia football team and to the defensive side. Alabama does have a top 10 defense, but Georgia has the top 5 defense. And their defense, if you were to play Georgia team, their defense was the scariest thing about them. You really didn't hear anything from Carson Beck or his other wide receivers that are left now. You heard a bunch of stuff from their defensive line and their safeties and their cornerbacks, which really is what held that Georgia team together, and which is the reason that they were the number 1 seed for so long that last season. So I think that history shall repeat itself in a better way than last year, and I think Georgia will reach the national championship, and I think that they will win the national championship this year.
Well, that game against Florida State was without Jordan Travis, without Keon Coleman, without Jared Verse. No one was playing in that game. It was pretty much Georgia versus a bunch of freshmen and sophomores. There wasn't anyone. And they also were out their backup quarterback. They were on their third-string quarterback, and they won, 63-7? It wasn't even close. It was never going to be close. That game going in was a 21-point spread. They knew what was going to happen. Now, one more thing. Let me tell you something about Kalen DeBoer. People don't know if he's good. People don't know this. His record against Dan Lanning, the guy people thought was going to be the next Alabama head coach, 2-0. Record against head coach Steve Sarkisian at Texas, 2-0. Kalen DeBoer is 4-0 against guys that are top 5 coaches in the country right now. Just wait till he plays against Kirby Smart. I promise you, Alabama is going to run the SEC from years to come, even without Nick Saban.
So now we're going to switch over to the pro level, the NFL. With many teams trying to get back to the Super Bowl, the Chiefs trying to go back-to-back, the Bengals trying to go to the Super Bowl. Trey, who you got winning the Super Bowl this year?
Well, I mean, I'm not really set on one team. I think that it can be anybody, but I think it's mainly going to be an AFC team. I think it's going to probably be somebody from the AFC North or West. I think it's going to be either the Bengals or the Ravens. I think both of those teams have very strong quarterbacks. Both do different things. Joe Burrow does more in the passing game, and Lamar Jackson does more in the run game. So, and they both have elite running backs in Joe Mixon and Derrick Henry, the new prospect, the new person that the Ravens drew in from Tennessee. And the Ravens also have some elite weapons because they have Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar, and they have a bunch of talent, especially with those players. And the Bengals have Jamar Chase. They have, again, Joe Mixon. It's just a widespread. I think the Chiefs can make it pretty far, but I don't know if they can repeat history. I don't think that they can go back to the Super Bowl again and win it because they already went back-to-back. And once you win a certain amount of times, teams will start to learn what your weaknesses are. But the Bengals and the Ravens haven't made it far enough for teams to know the weaknesses. As you saw last season, even though the Bengals didn't have Joe Burrow, they still were tied with the Pittsburgh Steelers and everyone for the lowest team, for the lowest record in the conference, even though they still had a decent amount of wins. So I think with the addition of Joe Burrow, I think they're going to go very far this season.
Harris, what do you think?
Well, first things first, Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar, Isaiah Likely, those aren't elite weapons whatsoever. But you want to hear elite weapons? Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert, Tua Tagovailoa. The Miami Dolphins are going to finally piece it together this year and win the Super Bowl. Mike McDaniel's finally going to find it together on defense. The offense is finally going to click for the full 17-game season. And they're going to go into the playoffs 13-4 and win the Super Bowl because Tua Tagovailoa is an elite quarterback. He might be a lefty, but he is elite, and they'll finally piece it together.
I think that Tua Tagovailoa, or as I like to call it, Tua turn the ball over, is not going to be a very good quarterback this season. I think, as his name states, he is going to throw. He's going to get nervous in the pocket, and I think he's going to throw many, many interceptions, especially last season. He had one of the fastest running backs in the game, two of the fastest running backs in the game with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. He had Raheem Mostert on the ground, and they put 70 points up on the Broncos. 70 points up on the Broncos, the highest score in NFL history. And they still were the number 6 seed, and they still got knocked out in the first round by the Chiefs. So I think that the Dolphins are not going to – they might not even make the playoff this season. And you have to remember the NFC can't be slept on. They have the Eagles, the hit or miss, the 49ers, they have Christian McCaffrey, they have Brock Purdy, they have Deebo Samuel. They have some elite talent over there, and they were the reigning Super Bowl appearances that lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think that it's going to be an AFC team, but the NFC is not to be slept on either. But I still don't think that the Dolphins, with Tua Tagovailoa and Raheem Mostert and all that talent, they still couldn't do anything last year, and I don't think they can do anything this year.
Well, Tua hasn't been Tua turn the ball over since his rookie season. Actually, he's led the NFL in completion percentage since then, and he's been a really efficient quarterback otherwise. And he obviously has really good talent around him, but he's an elite quarterback himself. Now, you talk about the game where they went in to play Kansas City in the playoffs, but you got to think about it. The Miami Dolphins are from Miami, Florida. We're talking 90-degree weather year-round. They went in to play in negative 20-degree weather in Kansas City. That doesn't happen very often for a team based out of South Florida. But now that they're ready for that kind of thing, who knows what the Dolphins can do? The Miami Dolphins are going to surprise a lot of people this year, especially with the Bills not having the talent they had last year around them. So that's why the Miami Dolphins are going to make it out of the AFC East, and they're going to win the Super Bowl.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Noah Seuss, joined by Trey and Harris. We'll see you all next time.